she'll be with us in a second. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Everybody on this call, hopefully, is a veteran at this. We had live classes in person, which is why I'm here in town hall in the IT training room for newbies. Now, if you're on this class and you're a newbie, maybe that's because you couldn't make one of the live ones. Certainly, we can. If you want more experience, we can get it for you if necessary, because we want to make sure everybody is comfortable.
You want to just check? I'm a newbie because I was just recruited as a sub.
Okay.
Well,
I'll tell you, when we go, well, when we go through the class, you'll see the screens, and you can make a decision if you want something in person, and we can make it happen for you. Okay. No sound, Mary.
Mary, you might have to turn up your microphone. No.
Yeah, it says that you're not muted now.
Yeah, if you go to the Zoom microphone and you click on audio settings, you might be able to. Maybe it's turned down.
All right, well, I tell you what, Mary is going to do some COVID-related stuff, and while she's working on that, I'll do the voter checklist stuff, and we'll do it in the opposite order than we had intended, so that way we can keep on moving forward. So I'm going to ask folks to mute themselves, except when they're asking questions. And by all means, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt me. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for joining. And I love the electronic checker position because I am a data geek, and it gives Mary and I all sorts of fun data. I used to be able to produce charts and graphs that would show in every polling place for every election the ebbs and flows of what times people voted. That, of course, was when we had commuters who went at 6 a.m. before they caught the train into New York City, and all sorts of good stuff like that. So all of that old data, don't know if any of it's of any value at this moment in time. But it'll be interesting to see in a few years how things change when we get accustomed to whatever we're eventually going to get accustomed to. And the folks in the parties love it because it gives them real-time data on who has voted, and more importantly, on who has not voted, so they can contact those people and try and get them out to the polls. And the general public really likes it too, because they can go to our website at any time on election day, and they can see how many people have voted throughout town. And it really gives a great sort of, up-to-date real-time data on that turnout. And we used to collect that data, and the press would call us, et cetera, and we had to get our 12 polling places to call us every hour, 16 times a day. So that's 200 phone calls that we've eliminated using this. So there's been lots and lots of benefits. So from your perspective, one of the biggest benefits is, even if you make a mistake, your record as the computer checker is the unofficial record of who was checked off. The paper record, okay, and the paper poll book is the official record of the election. Now, that's not to say that we don't want you to be, even with them as the day progresses, but there are places where things will go wrong, and you may be off because you're trying to transfer a voter, and you can't talk to the computer at the other location, et cetera. not a problem, okay? 1 or 2 is never a problem. 5, 10, 15, 20, then we start to get into problems, okay? So we're going to go right into the program. I'm going to share my screen. And, oh, first I want to get a little orange card here. Hold on. All right. So, as you know, you need to be at your polling place between 5 and 5:15. And, you know, I'm usually not like, you know, depending upon your position, like, oh, you know, if you're there a few minutes late, et cetera. For this election, it's super critical that you're there and you get your computer and you get that thing turned on as soon as possible. And I'll explain why. So when you get to the polling place and you get your computer, okay, your computer is going to have an assignment on it. There'll be a sticker on the case and on the computer as well that'll tell you what street or what set of streets you're working on. You'll need to be in that line in the polling place. And obviously, the paper checker will also need to be, you know, using the same set of streets as you, okay, because that's what the voters are expecting. There's going to be an orange card in the little case that includes your computer, okay? And that case gives a list of the equipment that is in the notebook. There's a laptop, a mouse pad, a black power adapter, sort of the power adapter for the computer, and a surge protector. We give you this little card because that's a reminder of the same 5 items that should be back in the suitcase at the end of the night, okay? So it's a handy checklist, and it also gives you the rudimentary basics of plug in the surge protector, plug the power adapter into the surge protector, plug the adapter into the notebook, turn the computer on, okay? There will be power brought to the table that you're sitting in. So, you know, you'll basically just have to plug the surge protector in and then the computer. When you turn on the computer, okay, you're going to, and I'm going to share my screen now. You're going to, you won't have to put in a password. You'll probably have to click, it'll say like elections, but then it'll let you in. And you're going to get just a big blue screen like what I'm seeing here, like what you should be seeing here. Somebody nod or wave to let me know that you're very good. Thank you, Karen, that you're seeing my screen. You're not going to see all these icons. You're going to see one icon, voter checklist. It'll be it. That's the whole sum of what's available to you. You're going to double click on it. And when you do that, it's going to load the program. Okay, and you're immediately going to see a live election. Now, I'm in the test room in town hall, and you can see I'm running a lot of classes, so I have a bunch of test elections here. But what's most important is if you look here where it says e-pollbook data sync in progress, you're going to see that's going to flash blue and green over and over again. And the reason, so the reason why we need you to be there at 5:15 and get this thing turned on is these computers were loaded with all of their data 2 weeks ago. That means there are almost 2,000 additional voters who have registered to vote since we loaded these computers. And there are over 9,000 absentee ballots just so far that have come back and been checked off since we loaded these computers. All of that data needs to be downloaded on election morning. And it is downloaded when you get your computer to this screen, okay? You're not starting the election or anything. You're just getting to the screen and your computer is going to sync. Now, this computer's been on a lot for me the last few days, so it's not actually showing a great deal of synchronization right now, but that box will change size and change color, etc. for you as it downloads data. And it'll say downloading data, downloading new election, stuff like that, okay? So before you get your coffee, please turn on the computer and get to this screen, okay? And just to make it clear, the screen will actually look something like this, right? It'll actually have some basic data on it. You do not want to click on the Start Election button yet, okay? So, and by the way, we learned this the hard way for an election a couple of years ago. There were a couple of people who, they came in, they started the election, or they arrived late, and then they started the election, and they did not give a chance for that data to download. Once you start the election, the download process is much slower, okay, because there's a lot else going on in the background of the computer. So it's critical that you let that stuff all get done before 6 a.m., okay? All right, so now it's 6 a.m., it's time to start the election. And today's the 22nd. So you're going to see data similar to this, and you're going to see a Start Election button. But just to run through what you see on the screen a little bit here first, you'll notice that you see that this particular poll book, this computer has 2,288 voters, and the location has 2,288 voters. Those numbers match because in this test environment, every computer represents a voting district. I'm sitting in District 4 right now, the New Lebanon School. But on election day, there's not going to be just one computer checking off voters. There's going to be 2, or in some districts 3, or in some districts 4, but it'll be split, so it'll kind of like be 2 and 2. Computers checking off voters. So the e-poll book and the polling location numbers will not match. It'll be roughly a half or roughly a third. But you can kind of see what's going on in your whole location here, as well as seeing what's going on just on your computer. And you're going to see these numbers change as we go on, as you check off voters and as absentee votes are checked off as well. So now it's 6 a.m., we're going to start the election. So the first thing that happens when you start the election, and this is there's only 2 notes that I really am going to ask you to take during this, and this is the first one. When you click Start the Election, the computer is going to ask you for a backup disk, okay? And that is because every time a voter is checked off, the computer writes that information to the hard drive. It writes it up into the cloud, and it writes it onto this little backup disk. And all the backup disk is it's a little secure digital card, just like the kind of stuff that you used to put into a digital camera, okay, one of those little square cards, and it's already plugged into your computer. It's when you're looking at the computer, it'll be right at the front where kind of my belly is up against the computer. Now, you don't have as big a belly as I do, so yours might not rub up against it the same way, but it's right around there where it is, okay? And if it's, you'll feel it slightly jutting out. If it's jutting out a lot, you can just push it in. But what happens is it's warning you it needs this backup. When I click continue, it's going to ask me, what is the drive letter? On election day, that backup drive is drive Z. If you don't see a drive Z, let us know. But if it is properly inserted, it will show a drive Z, and that's what you're going to check, okay? So you're going to highlight it. Now, I don't have a drive Z on this computer because it doesn't have a backup disk. So for testing, I'm going to choose C. But it's important on election day you choose Z. Zeta, Z, okay, just in case you can't hear me through the mask, all right? And I'm going to click continue. And now you're ready to check off voters. And the streets that you're going to see are representative of the line you're in and the polling location you're in. So these are the streets of the people who vote in District 4 at the New Lebanon School. And I'm now going to show you very quickly what you're going to do about 600-700 times during the day, and it'll be 95% of what you do. A voter is going to come in, and they're going to announce their street name, their street number, and then their personal name in that order. That's what they're supposed to do. Many will do it. Many will not because they only vote every 4 years and they've forgotten that's how they're supposed to do it. But we're going to try and remind them. And the good news is, by the time they get to you, they'll have already seen the paper checker who will already have asked them these same questions. So they should be used to it. Now, you have to also remember that in a regular election, a non-COVID election, the computer checker is sitting right next to their buddy, the paper checker. But here, you're each going to have your own 6-foot table and be socially distanced. So you're not going to hear when the voter's talking to the paper checker. They're going to need to repeat themselves for you. We hope everyone will be courteous and patient about that on their side and on your side. And do remember that everyone is going to be speaking through masks, which makes it harder, and the acrylic shield, okay, which also definitely affects sound. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Fred, is there an ID checker this time or no?
There will be an ID checker,
okay.
Yes. Okay. But the ID checker's job is basically to tell the voter to get out their ID, to speed the line on, or if they don't have their ID, refer them to the moderator so they can sign the affidavit and stuff like that. But the ID checker is 12 feet away, so you'll never hear what's going on there. Okay. All right, so now the voter has come, and I'm going to go to Talbot Lane and number 8 Talbot Lane. And I have 2 voters. I'm going to choose the voter who's in front of me, click, and after a second, the computer is going to cross that voter off, okay? Congratulations. That's what you're going to be doing over and over and over again, okay? So just to show you one more example, actually I'll show you a few, right? I can choose any street. So voter says they live on New Street at number 88. That's a tiny street. They're on the 2nd floor. And you see it shows the voter's name. Interesting, you'll notice that for apartment buildings and things like that, if you just click on the address, and I don't know if I have a better example of this somewhere, but you will see all of the voters in the building, okay? And you'll see all of the unit numbers. So in a small building, you can just find the voter. But if you're in some place like 1465 East Putnam Avenue over in District 12, which is a big condo complex, you might have to go to the unit number in order to narrow it down because you'll have a real long list of voters, okay? But again, once you've identified your voter, you click on them, etc. Now, let's say you click on the wrong voter. You meant to click on Mrs. Flores and you clicked on Mr. Flores. You cannot simply click again to uncheck, okay? Anything special like that requires an audit trail and requires notifying the moderator or the 2 assistant registrars. The 3 folks together represent the sort of the triumvirate that runs the polling place. Okay, so they're going to have the special passphrase, and they're going to put in their name, and then you can uncheck the voter, and you will see when I clicked on it, it automatically unchecked the voter. Okay, so there's 2 or 3 occasions when you'll need to call somebody over, and it always asks for generally the same information. So as I said, you're just going to be clicking on streets, street numbers, and checking off voters. Okay. So, and I also said that's about 95% of the job. So there's 2 other fairly common scenarios with voters coming into a polling place. The first is voters who are inactive. So an inactive voter is somebody who is not on the active paper list for a variety of reasons, but typically somehow the post office or something has prompted us to send them a letter because we don't believe they move anymore. We got no response from the letter, so we moved them to inactive. An inactive voter has not lost their right to vote. If they come to their polling place, they just need to fill out a new voter registration card and they'll be reactivated right there. No waits, no fuss, don't have to go anywhere else if they're inactive. But of course, they're not in your regular list. So where do you find them? You will see there's a few tabs here in the program, and there's one that says Restore Inactive Voter. So when I click on the tab, I see a change in color, and now if I go to any of these streets, all of the voters that I see when the person says they live at 37 Smith Street North is I only see the inactive voters. And you'll notice I can't just click on them, okay? Because once again, an inactive voter is somebody who has seen the moderator has reactivated them, the paper checker will be instructed to physically write them in their book, you will be instructed to restore them, and when you attempt to do that by clicking over here on the magnifying glass, the computer will give you their information, you'll click Restore Voter, and once again, password and who is authorizing. Okay. So those are two of the three places where you need to get authorization. So you'll see when I restore the voter, it actually checks them off automatically. Okay. Now you'll also notice that when I moved into restoring a voter, the text went from black to green. And I like to equate this with the Wizard of Oz. Okay, so if you've ever seen the movie, Kristen likes my jokes, I'm noticing. I get a little chuckle out of her every once in a while. So the Wizard of Oz, if you've seen the movie, okay, when you're in Kansas, and you're doing your regular stuff, everything is black and white. But when you're doing something out of the ordinary and you're in Oz, there's a whole bunch of different colors. So if you're seeing funky colors, you should remember you're not in the place where you should be 95% of the time, okay? So you got to get back to Kansas. So I'm going to go back to in-person votes, okay? And again, I can go and I can check off voters and do all that good stuff. So we've checked off regular voters. We have restored inactive voters. There's three things left for us. But the other item, which is you will see a few times, is you're going to have people who have moved, and despite our best efforts, they have not told us they've moved, but they know because they vote every year that they're active registered voters. And if they moved from, say, North Mianus to here in Byram, they know, okay, well, everybody in Byram goes and votes at the New Lebanon School, so I'm going to go over there. So now they're not here because they live on Sweetbriar, or they used to live and they're registered at Sweetbriar Lane over in District 12. So how are we going to find Sweetbriar Lane? It's not one of the streets here. What we do is there's a checkbox here. It says display voters in this district only. If you uncheck that, it's now going to show you every street in town. Now, obviously, you don't want to be working like this all day because you've got to sit there and scroll all the time. It's a huge pain in the neck. But when you need to restore a voter, you display all the streets. And I'm going to look for Sweetbriar Lane. And number 3, Sweetbriar Lane. Oh, and there he is, Fred DiCaro, that's me. And it says I vote in District 12. When I roll over, District 12. It knows it can't just check me off. But again, if I go to the magnifying glass, the computer is really smart. It knows that I'm going to need to prepare some sort of action. And it says ready to transfer the voter. It also says, by the way, that I've not voted, which is good. Now, you're not going to just be transferring people willy-nilly. The voter has already going to have alerted the moderator, okay, because they're not in the book. The moderator is going to have contacted North Miamis to verify that the person has not voted there. They're going to have then instructed the paper checker next to you to write the name in the book. And now it's your turn to transfer the voter. So when you click transfer, you're asked for the same familiar questions plus one more. So the password, and again, we don't actually give you the password, we give it to the assistant registrars and the moderators because they need to authorize these things. Okay, and then the comments field, what we ask you to put in there, this is the second note we ask you to write down, is the new address of the voter. Okay, now, I don't need to know the zip code. I don't need to know the section of town, etc. I don't even need to have it spelled correctly. All I need to know is the rudimentary thing that the person moved to 1 Mead Avenue. And I'm even going to spell Mead wrong. Okay? All right. This is not a field that's entering this data into the voter registration system, etc. It's an informational way for us to have an audit trail to say, okay, somebody moved. We were supposed to get a new voter registration card from them. This is their new address. Did we get that? And if not, we know how to track them down to get that card, okay? Because they live on 1 Mead Avenue. Now, when I click complete transfer, one of two things is going to happen. It's going to work or not work. Now, I'm sitting in a room and there's nobody else here, and I think a lot of the computers are off. So when I try and ask the District 12 computer behind me, hey, can you transfer this voter? It's either going to say yes and do it, or you're going to get an error message. Okay, my guess is that computer's off because it would have completed at this point otherwise. And I'll see an error message in a minute. Here's my error. Can you see that error message on the screen? I don't know if it pops up. It basically just voter could not be transferred, but it's kind of just a standard browser message and you click OK. So you could not successfully transfer that voter. That may happen to you during the day. What you do is you simply, if this is going to happen once, maybe twice, you keep a record. Out of an abundance of caution, most people will write down the name of the person, but at the very least, you want to know that you will have one less person checked off than the paper checker next to you. Okay? So that's just so that at the end of the night, when they're trying to reconcile the official book, okay, you're able to, kind of stay in sync with them. Now, talking a little bit about that in sync. Every hour, that paper checker, okay, and the ID checker next to them and the ballot clerk, they all have these little tally sheets, and they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, I had 22 voters this hour. Oh, I had 22, etc. And they'll have a cumulative total also. All right, so far I've had 65 voters today. You also have a cumulative total right up here, but you don't have to do any tick marks or anything. You know you've already checked off 4 people in person, okay? And that's what they're looking for, the number of people that have come in person. So you can just look at that at the same time as them and use the cumulative total. Or if you want, you're starting the day at 0 at 7 a.m., you could jot down, all right, I had 20 people. And at 8 a.m., well, it shows I had 40. So 40 minus 20 shows I had another 20 that hour, etc. So you almost could measure your own ebb and flow of how many voters per hour. But the important part is every hour, the same number of people should have passed by all of you, okay? If you're off by 1 or 2, it doesn't take that long to try and reconcile that. And it's great to be in sync every hour rather than suddenly be out of sync by 20 voters at the end of the day. And if at the end of the night, by the way, you're off by 1 or 2, we don't ask you to sit there all night to find it, okay? We have some folks who are very meticulous and try to do that. It's not worth it. 1 vote, you know, we have a very good chain of custody. We don't believe that we have ballots flying around willy-nilly, okay, in this. It just means somebody didn't check somebody off, okay? So you know, you will be part of that sync process where every hour, you know, people will be checking with each other. All right, so I've gone over in-person votes. I've gone over transferring voters. I've gone over inactive voters. Those are basically all of the kinds of voters that you're going to be able to check off during the day. However, there's one more special case, and I can't illustrate it to you because there aren't any in this district. 4 of you are going to see it during the day, okay? Only 4 out of the 38 checkers, because there are exactly 4 people in the town of Greenwich who are part of an address protection program where their address is not displayed in the computer or in the paper book, okay? For myriad reasons, whether it's a judge or, you know, family matters or they're police officers, lots of different ways you can apply for this. So what happens is these folks, we have a lot of veteran checkers, et cetera. So when these folks come in, they also know, now they're in a polling place and they're trying to, you know, they don't want people to know their address. So they may not go to the line. If they live on Smith Street, they may not go to the S line. They can go to whatever line they want, okay? In the paper book, they're literally written in the back of every paper book in the line, okay? It'll just have their name and say address suppressed. For a computer checker, okay, here, right before the first street, if you have one of these, it will say address suppressed. There'll be 1 street number, 0, and you'll see all 4 of the people. And only one will be, you'll be able to check off. That's the one who lives there. The others would be like transfers, et cetera. And these folks are not, they're not moving on election day. So how will you know one of these folks is in part of this program? They're going to have a yellow card issued by the Secretary of the State's office with the seal of the Secretary of State and I think even their signature, et cetera. But it's going to be, you know, kind of, you know, obvious. It's not going to be a standard piece of ID, okay? And most likely the paper checker next to you, because a lot of our paper checkers are veterans, they're going to have seen this before, okay? You're going to have one of these in District 1 if you're working there. You're going to have one of these in District 8. I don't remember where the other 2 are, okay? Maybe District 6 is one, but your chances are 4 out of 38 of seeing it. But they will be coming because they're all very diligent citizens who do vote every time. So I've gone through all of the permutations of what you could actually see on election day and check people off. Regular in-person voters, inactive voters, transfers, address suppressed. I just want to show you a couple of other features of the software. The first is there's a voter search where you could just put in a fraction of a voter's name. Now, most of our moderators are pretty computer savvy, and we give them a special website that they can go to on their phone, or some of them bring a tablet, and they can look up a voter if a voter is not in their paper list for the place, because maybe they're voters in another district and they're trying to help them figure out where they are. But we do have a couple of moderators who may not be quite so computer savvy. So they may come to you and say, can you help me look up a voter? So you can go to this voter search, put in any portion of the name. For instance, I can put in only a portion of my last name, and I'm going to get all the DeCaros, and I'm also going to get all the DeCarlos, okay, because it's a pretty smart search, and I even get these DeCarvalho folks down here. right? So, and from here, you'd be able to tell, okay, well, Fred DiCaro is actually lives at 3 Sweetbriar Lane and he's in District 12. So you got to send him to District 12 unless he's moved. Right? So this helps you track down a voter to see if they're in the list anywhere in town. Okay. Sometimes you may be asked to use that. Other times the moderator may handle it themselves. Now, while all the information in here is public information, and any citizen or resident of the town or from outside of the town could call us up and ask for any of this information, you should not be sitting here using this to satisfy your curiosity during the day on your neighbors and friends and such. But you're going to have a busy day, so I don't think you're going to be able to spend a lot of time during the day doing that anyway. Okay.
Fred, what are the you have absentee in the right-hand corner. I
Yes.
know we discussed that in the other training the other night. How does this affect the electronic checker?
So the electronic checker does not have to check off people. What happens is when, the morning of the election, I will download a file of everyone who's been checked off prior to the start of the day. And in that morning, that 5:15 to 6 a.m. period, all of that data is put in and it's all synchronized. So you will see those voters. You will see them checked off, okay? But you're not doing anything with them as an electronic checker, okay? And in fact, by the end of the day, okay, depending upon how quickly the paper checkers check their folks off, your numbers should match because most of their folks will have already been put in the book. They only have to put in folks who have basically, we received their absentee ballots on Monday, okay? Any other questions while we have this short break?
I mean, one thing I was wondering about, it doesn't relate directly to this, but just like, I guess, new housekeeping sort of things. So obviously we have things like where people can't come in wearing political buttons and such, but what if someone comes up, they're trying to tell us something and they unhook their mask, for instance, so that they speak more clearly? Should we politely ask them to put their mask back on, or what should our reaction?
Sure. Well, we do everything politely, that's for certain, right?
Of course.
So, because we're Greenwich and we're a genteel community. So, but the voter, you know, you should say, if you wouldn't mind, please keep your mask on. Every voter is asked to wear a mask. We have attempted to telegraph that, and we even have some beautiful new signs before you walk into the polling place that say, "Did you forget?" And it says, "Do you have your mask? Do you have this?" etc. However, the Constitution of the United States kind of trumps everything else, and we have been instructed if a person doesn't wear a mask, first we offer them a mask. If they continue to be obstinate about that, we simply work as fast as we can to get them through the line and get them out of the polling place, okay? But they'll be offered a mask. They'll also be offered curbside voting, which is not bad. I mean, hey, you get to sit in your car. We bring the ballot out to you, two people, make sure your privacy is protected, and walk it back into the tabulator, etc. But again, somebody who wants to vote in person, and for some reason you can't, you can't ask them for anything. It's, you just have to move them through in and out as fast as possible.
I have a question.
Sure.
Fred, this is Eugenia. Are there going to be a plexiglass separating the
yes, well, I was told that plexiglass is kind of like Kleenex. It's a brand name. So I'm calling it an acrylic shield. But yes, we will have a nice, big, bold plexiglass barrier between you and the voter.
What about between the checkers?
No, you'll be separated by 6 feet. Because you each are going to be in the center of a 6-foot table.
All right.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
just wondered if this happens, because I could see it happening more this year, that somebody comes in and says, yes, I voted absentee, but I just really want to make sure my vote is counted. And, you know, who is it who addresses that?
So we've got 4 brand new signs outside of every polling place. And one of them says, if you put your ballot in the mail, you have voted, okay? Please do not vote again, okay? And it is true, if somebody has put their ballot in the mail or they have put it in the drop box, they have voted, okay? Now, there could be a situation where they put it in the mail and it hasn't been received yet, but the fact of the matter is they have gone through the voting process as they requested, okay? Because they requested the absentee. So no, they should not be voting again. For the standpoint, if your question relates to how to protect against double voting, that the safeguard on that is no ballots that are received at the town clerk's office on election day will be opened on election day. They will wait. We will wait on those ballots until the day after and check against the poll books to see whether or not that person voted in person.
Okay, I see.
But no, people, you have different scenarios. You have people who want to hold on to their ballot because they think they might want to vote by absentee, and that's totally fine. If they haven't actually voted the ballot, we have another sign outside that says, do not bring your ballot inside the polling place. Destroy it, okay? But we don't want it inside the polling place commingling with other ballots, okay? So I'm happy to take more questions, and there will be other opportunities for questions. I want to run through a couple more things on voter checklist. So no one has yet asked the question, what happens if the computer goes down? So the good news is the computer does not go down frequently, okay? And we have literally a technician who is sitting there all day waiting in case something happens. He's kind of like the Maytag repairman. He does not have that much to do, okay? Because usually these things run, but if there is an issue, he will come out to your polling place. Now, let's say that you have an issue and we get our technician on the phone, and first thing you can do is you can just restart the computer. It's a Windows PC, okay? If you don't know how to do it, ask the youngest kid in the place. He'll know how to do it, or she will know how to do it, okay? So, and when you start, you would just go through that same starting process. Like if I close the program like right now, like it's a crash, okay, and I restart, all I have to do is go back, click start election again. It's going to ask me for that backup drive, and I'll be back in the same place. Okay. But what happens during that whole reset process? Well, you can't have a line of people forming, okay? Because remember, even 3 people, suddenly they're 18 feet, they're hitting the door, right? So what happens is, and this is important to remember, in the goodie totes, the totes filled with all the fun stuff that we send to the polling place, there are purple highlighters. You or the paper checker next to you, if you have a problem, should remember about this purple highlighter and go get it, okay? And you don't use it, the paper checker uses it. And what they do is, as the voter passes by them, rather than check off that voter, they highlight the voter in purple. When your computer comes back up, they simply start at the front of the book. They look for their purple highlights. They give you the name, you check it off, they check it off. After a few more of those highlights, you're back in sync. So that's how the paper checker can help you. Meanwhile, you'll notice I've restarted the computer. I'm going to go back to my election, click start, go through the process of selecting drive Z again. And I'm back to where I was. So now I gave you the issue of how you can help how they can help you. Now I'm going to tell you how you can help the paper checker. Let's say you are off by 1, okay? Or you're off by 2, and you want to try and figure out where that is. It's hard to see what this says, but when you roll over it, you'll see that it says View Reports. If you click on this blue button up here, you're going to see a new browser tab was opened, and there's going to be a bunch of reports. There's a super important report called Who Voted. If you click on that, it's going to give you in street order all of the people who you've checked off. Okay, and I've only checked off 5 people, so there's not many here, but because it's in street order, it perfectly matches the checker book next to you. And now it won't work if you say, all right, Alice DiCaro, Sweetbriar Lane, Michael McDonald, 12 Talbot Lane. But if you say to the checker, I have 5 people on Sweetbriar Lane, and they say, yep, I have 5 people. I have 7 people on Talbot Lane. Yep, I have 7 people. And you go through it in those kind of groupings, you'll be able to find a discrepancy relatively quickly. Okay?
Fred, I have a question. Why does it say 5 results, but only 4 total votes?
That's a good question. Sweetbriar Lane, 4 in-person votes.
It's because one was transferred in.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I believe it's because of I know it's because of the restored voter, but you're right. I would think it should
But shouldn't it show the total votes though?
It should. Yeah.
Okay. And while I have you, when we, turned the computer off, rebooted it, turned it on, it obviously populates all the data is all there, right? It pulled it from the cloud or where everything that we had previously entered is all
still there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to pull anything down. It's all been sitting there. But that's a really a good question about why that number is what that number is. In-person votes. I'll definitely have to look at that. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what it is. Yes, it was the attempted transfer, right? So it wasn't able to complete the transfer. So, so your running total, remember when it failed up here, doesn't show it, but it does actually show it down here.
And we would have written that person's name down.
Exactly.
That's what we did.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. You're right.
Thank you. And Francesca, who is a veteran at this, and she put us on the right path on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. So now, having gone through all of the different steps, it's 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, you need to get a cup of coffee, okay, or have a drink or do something like that. And of course, by drink I mean not an adult beverage. I mean like a soft drink. All right, you have to go home first for the adult beverage. And the reason why I say that is because at this point that you're done, but the paper checker next to you, they have to fill out a report that asks them a bunch of questions, including how many names were checked off. Now, if they kept a good tally sheet during the day, well, then they just fill that in. But if they didn't, they've got to count up all of those names in their book, which is like 900 names, okay? So that takes them a few minutes. So out of courtesy, okay, because we'd like you guys to be close and be able to reconcile, if you go have your coffee or your soft drink, that gives them time to start doing that counting, okay? And I haven't closed the polls yet in your poll book. So if, for instance, they find that you made a mistake and you missed somebody, you could go in and you could then check them off, okay? Now, we're not asking you to be completely in sync, nor if the person is taking 30 or 40 minutes, are we asking you to sit around for that entirely. But I'm hoping that we've done a good enough job in hiring our official checkers, which is the most critical role in the place because of those numbers. That they're going to be up to snuff related to this. So at that point, once you guys are near in sync, you should close the polls. And to close the polls, simply, there's an icon here in the front of the top of the screen. You click on it. It warns you, are you sure? You type in YES, all in capitals, and close the poll. Now, that doesn't prevent you from looking at reports. It wouldn't prevent you from and it says here the polls are now closed. It doesn't prevent you from looking at a particular street. What it does do is it prevents you from checking off a new voter. No matter how many times I roll over and click on this, that voter's not going to get crossed off. So effectively, this book is now locked. Okay? So that's why if you are going to help with that reconciliation, and it's possible you miss somebody, wait to close the polls until you have that. Okay?
So I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mary.
I have been trying everything. I'm so happy. All right. What I actually had to do was leave the meeting and come back. There was something wrong with the microphone. I think because I was trying repeatedly to get in early on. So anyway.
So does anybody have any more questions on voter checklist? And then Mary and I can go through a little bit just of the general logistics and breaks and stuff like that. And Mary will talk a little bit more about COVID safety. But first, anything else on voter checklist?
Just real fast, right? We talked the other evening, we talked on the official checker, the 8 o'clock, obviously the polls closed, but if there's a line out the door, are we staying beyond 8 o'clock?
Yes. So if there is a line out the door, anybody who is in line at 8 o'clock may vote.
Okay.
So what happens is a poll worker, one of those assistant registrars or somebody, will go at 8 o'clock and stand behind that last voter.
Okay.
They'll shoo away anybody. Okay. In my experience, we've never had that. We don't really. Okay. So, and again, given all of the data from previous elections always shows a big swell, forgetting about commuters, a big swell where people seem to be voting more and more earlier in the day. There used to be a second hump in the evening. The last few years, that's tamped down. So I think that unless the weather's really bad, and the reason why I say that is because if the weather's bad, what happens is people wait to see if it's going to get better. But then it doesn't get better, and they say, oh, I got to get out there. And now suddenly they all got to get there at the end of the day, okay? But in general, you do not have a big rush at the end of the day.
Fred?
Yes.
Could you go over again the blue box at top left? That makes it easy for both checkers to cross-check. I couldn't see what it said.
It says view reports.
It says which?
View, like it, VIEW, okay. View reports.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and then when you click on it, you scroll down a little bit and you choose who voted. Okay, and then that will give you all of the names of all of the people. Okay, now I want to point out that this is a browser window. It looks just like Google Chrome, except you can't go and type in Macy's.com. You actually could type in Macy's.com, but don't do that. So if you open one of those reports, it opens in other windows. Just close those windows when you're done and leave open the first one, okay? And again, if for some reason you get lost, close the whole thing. You don't have to restart the computer, but you could close the whole thing and just double click and open voter checklist again and get back in. Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to sit back a little, and Mary can talk about breaks and lunch and
Yes.
safety and all of the other important stuff for you as a poll worker, because we want you to have a great day, and we thank you for joining us.
Yes. So, Fred, if you can exit from there,
Sure.
I can access.
All right, and I've turned it on so you can share your screen if you like.
Yes. So, oh dear. Here we go. Share my screen.
Fred has to make you the host to share your screen.
No,
Yes.
anybody can share their screen. All participants are allowed.
Okay.
There you go.
So,
Play from start.
where am I?
Over on the left.
Oh, thank you. Okay. There we go. Safe voting. So I love sharing this because I love this artwork a friend did for us. Good, very good. I have some participants covering this up, but it's pretty straightforward. We all know what's important to do leading up to the election. We just pay extra attention to the obvious rules that we've been living by. If you do travel or have plan to travel, it would be good if you could contact Fred or me, and we can talk about the plans and what can be done. We do have one poll worker who is, I think, traveling now, but she will be back shortly, and she will be taking a COVID test in a good time frame. So that is an option. And obviously, if you think you've come into contact with somebody who's possibly sick with COVID, please let us know. And do not hesitate to call at the very last minute, because we have these incredible super backup people, several of them who are here this evening, who are training themselves in all the different aspects of poll worker jobs. And even if you call at the last minute, we will be able to cover you. And of course, everybody's safety is the most important thing. So the morning of election, take your temperature, call us if you have one. We normally share food at the polling places, but we won't be doing that because of the COVID situation. So you need to pack all the food and beverages you need for this very long day. Please don't pack anything that needs refrigeration, and we'll be increasing everybody's salaries to cover the food expense. Wear a mask when you enter the polling place. We have many masks, 2 different types. Fred and I both like the KN95 masks for wearing long-term, and somehow they're more breathable than some of the cloth masks. So I think they're more effective. So we highly recommend those. If you do want to change from your own mask into one of the masks we're providing, just leave the polling place and take care of that, because masks must be worn at all times in the polling place. No exceptions. And if you do have a problem with that, you should talk to us. We have disposable gloves if you want to wear them. We have hand sanitizer, lots of hand sanitizer. And various cleaning products. Very important, take a break. We don't expect that everybody can, even though you're doing a job that's specialized, the assistant registrars in your district should be sufficiently familiar with your job, but also we have that wonderful purple highlighter. So if you need to take a break, the official checker can do the purple highlighting. And when you get back, you can sync your records. Then we created a new poll worker position, the COVID safety monitor. And this poll worker is charged with constantly sanitizing the polling place. And we mentioned the acrylic screens, the distancing of poll workers. Ordinarily, voters use privacy booths and privacy folders, and they are available. Well, the folders really aren't available. We're telling people if they really feel they need a folder, we have a stack of plain paper they can use. But privacy booths are not necessary to use, and we're hoping that voters bring their own book or something to write against and just stand there and fill out their ballot and saving cleaning. We have plenty of that equipment. If you have any questions, here we are. I think you all know how to reach us at this point. What else did we need to talk about, Fred? I'm trying to remember now.
Well, you know, the only other thing that I want to mention, and they want me to get out of this room so everybody can go home here in Town Hall, is all of our poll worker documentation, I'm going to kick you off the screen, Mary, is located online, okay? Including, just trying to get to it real fast, including as of tomorrow afternoon, a recording of this meeting. So if you go to greenwichct.gov/vote, you'll find the Registrar of Voters page. And you'll see we have a section called I Want to Work at the Polls. Poll worker training materials, okay? The electronic checker handbooks, which the live people got here, are both available for you to download. All of the other materials used in our training. And you can see we had the official checker training. The recording is already up, posted on YouTube. Hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, this training will be posted on here as well. Okay? So everything you need should be available to you for download or review. If not, we can certainly email you something. All right. I think we're ready to wrap up then, Mayor.
Yes, very good.
Okay.
All right.
Fred, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Is there any like secret phrases that we need to know? Because I know last time there was like a secret phrase.
Yeah, the secret phrase is given to the assistant registrars and moderators in an email the night before the election.
Like, no, because like, you know how last training we did like on Zoom, there was like 3 phrases that you gave out.
Oh, right. Yeah, you know, I didn't get around to it this time. We're going to have to use the honor system.
Yeah.
So, and that's only for people who watch the recording. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yes.
But you're
Nothing
right.
to worry about there. Fred and I have been very busy. We haven't been able to, yeah. That's
got
good.
it.
Yeah, and I'm actually here. My camera is just broken on the computer, and there was a picture of our gallery logo before, so I decided to replace it with a picture of my cat, just so it wasn't for advertising. But
I enjoyed the cat. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Henry though.
All right, great.
All right. Well, I'm going to say good night to everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
great
much.
evening.
Night.
Take care.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.